Guys, Dr. Eric Balcabbage, we're back for another edition of Thyroid Thursday, and today we're talking about tissue hypothyroidism and its relationship to elevated cholesterol. I've been getting a lot of questions from people regarding how is hypothyroidism tied to cholesterol levels. And it's a little side note, when we think about hypothyroidism, you can have low cholesterol and low LDL if you have hypothyroidism, and you can have elevated cholesterol and LDL when you have hypothyroidism. Now, early on, it all really depends on where you are in that hypothyroid spectrum. So as we get more into more significant cases, definitely when there's overt subclinical and overt hypothyroidism, like that thyroid gland is really losing its capacity to produce thyroid hormone, the tendency is to have higher cholesterol and higher LDL levels because there's a net synthesis of cholesterol and a net decrease in metabolism of cholesterol. So there's a rise in cholesterol. But early on, you might have a lower cholesterol level with hypothyroidism. But what is tissue hypothyroidism? We probably should talk about that. I've talked about this in multiple videos. Tissue hypothyroidism or cellular hypothyroidism is the reduction of T3 inside the cells of a particular tissue. Let's say the liver in this situation. Now, what would cause a gland or a tissue to have reduced conversion of T4 to T3 inside those cells of the tissue? If the cells of that tissue are sensing danger, that's one of the reasons why they may downregulate their metabolism. So bacteria, virus, toxin may cause that cell to sense danger. There's reduced metabolism of the cell, and that can result, or that danger physiology decreases the conversion of T4 to T3. That helps with the downregulation of the metabolism, the ramping up of cell defense. So that is tissue hypothyroidism. Can impact any gland. Remember, all the tissues can self-regulate the amount of their metabolism and the amount of thyroid hormone T3 inside the cell, and they all can function independently because they have different transport mechanisms to get thyroid hormone into the cell. They have different deiodinase concentrations to determine whether the cell can convert T4 into active T3 or it can deactivate it. And then we have different types of receptors in different tissues. So that all three of those mechanisms allow cells to kind of regulate their metabolism independently of other tissues, okay? So it's important also to know that it is the reduction of T3 inside your cells and tissues that results in the symptoms of hypothyroidism or the signs of hypothyroidism, okay? You can have decreased T3 inside the cells despite having a perfectly functioning thyroid gland, despite having a TSH within the reference range. Remember, there's been papers that discuss that by the time your TSH is lab high and your free T4 is lab low, which helps us give that diagnosis of glandular or overt hypothyroidism, you've probably lost 90% of the function of that thyroid gland, okay? So the signs and symptoms of hypothyroidism are the result of decreased T3 inside the cell, and they can occur with a normal TSH. It can occur with a normal T4 in the bloodstream, whether it's still normal and you're not on thyroid hormone replacement therapy, or you're taking thyroid hormone replacement therapy. I think there's a general consensus that as long as you take enough T4 to normalize TSH, that every cell is going to convert T4 to T3 at the same level, and that has not been proven to be the case. And we also know that as T4 medication levels go up, and it's definitely as T4 goes up in the bloodstream, we often see a drop in T3, okay? Definitely as TSH goes down, we see a decreased conversion of T4 to T3, okay? So you can also have cellular tissue hypothyroidism despite taking high dose T3. There's some people in the functional medicine or integrative space that when they see people have normal T4 but lower TSH, they assume that the person can't convert it. Like the body forgot how to do it, so let's just give them the T3 that the body has forgotten how to convert. I don't think that's the case in most situations. I don't think it's broken physiology. I think it's more adaptive physiology. The cells and tissues don't want to convert it. That's why T3 is low. Giving somebody a bunch of T3 may normalize the T3 in the bloodstream, but it also drops TSH, so it reduces your capacity to make T3 naturally, okay? So we gotta be cautious of that. So 3 ways that tissue hypothyroidism can cause a rise in your cholesterol levels, and LDL typically goes with it. One of those is you get decreased bile flow. So one of the big ways to get cholesterol out of the bloodstream and out of the body is to pull the cholesterol out of the bloodstream, get it into the bile, and it goes out into the GI tract, okay? If you have decreased T3 at the liver, you're gonna have decreased bile flow. So now cholesterol backs up, and we're gonna have problems getting with rises of cholesterol, a rise in cholesterol, okay? Second thing is when we have decreased T3 inside the cell, that means our mitochondrial function is typically reduced. And as mitochondrial function becomes reduced, what we see is I can't take that food energy and convert it into cellular energy, so that food energy can then be diverted to make more cholesterol. So even though T3 is needed for both cholesterol production and cholesterol metabolism, there's a net increase in cholesterol synthesis when we have a lower T3 state. So we're gonna get more cholesterol production, and then that cholesterol's gotta go places. It's gonna go out in the bloodstream so it can go to other tissues and be used. The third reason is that there is for cholesterol, most of the cholesterol to get pulled out of the bloodstream, cholesterol is carried on these lipoproteins, and these, especially LDL, docks to what are called LDL receptors. And so to get the cholesterol out of the bloodstream, these lipoproteins dock to the LDL receptors, and then that cholesterol is brought into the cell. And so if you have decreased T3 at the liver, these LDL receptors aren't going to work effectively or efficiently. So now I have defective docking stations for LDL. I can't get the cholesterol that's bound to that LDL to dock to the liver to get the cholesterol out of the bloodstream, so the cholesterol builds up in the blood. And so it could go to other tissues, but let's take into consideration your adrenal gland. Your adrenal gland could use that cholesterol to make cortisol. Your adrenal gland could use that to make your sex hormones. And so how does the cholesterol get out of the bloodstream and get into the adrenal gland to make adrenal hormones? Well, 50 to 80%, depending on the papers you read, 50 to 80% of the cholesterol that's used for your adrenal hormones comes from the blood, with the LDL receptors and these lipoproteins that carry the cholesterol docking to the LDL receptors to pull that cholesterol in. So if you had decreased T3 at the adrenal gland, you're going to have decreased synthesis and production of your adrenal hormones. So DHEA goes down, your progesterone goes down, your cortisol levels go down. And so we talk, many times people talk about adrenal fatigue. My cortisol is low, I must have adrenal fatigue. How about what we have is really a low T3 state at the adrenal gland, and therefore I can't get the cholesterol out of the bloodstream to actually make into my cortisol. Probably a better reason for lower production. So what do? Well, that's what everybody wants to know. Just tell me what to do. This is not a video to tell you what to do. What do we need to do is to determine why you're not converting T4 to T3. What's creating that cell stress or cell danger response? And that's not a simple answer, but we talk about that. Kelly and I talk about that in the book, The Thyroid Debacle. It's physical stress, chemical stress, organisms, toxins, and everybody's got a unique combination that needs to be addressed. But this is a good indication that if you have elevated cholesterol and elevated LDL, you probably have a level of tissue hypothyroidism that needs to be investigated, okay? It's also an indication that if you're on LT4 or T3 therapy and you still have elevated cholesterol and LDL, that hormone that you're taking is probably not getting into the cells effectively or efficiently.